Hello, fellow griever. This is the Leftover Pieces Suicide Loss Conversations podcast, and I am Melissa, your host. This week, you have found yourself with me for one of my shorter, solo, down the rabbit hole episodes. Here, I take you with me on a journey of sorts, through thoughts in my own griefy mind. Some days, I may tackle topics as if I am in Alice's shoes, slaying the Jabberwocky. And on others, I may end up in my own pool of tears. Or I may just go a bit sideways and paint the proverbial roses red. But I always promise an adventure. So let's dive down the rabbit hole and see just what sorts of madness we might discover together. I am glad you have joined me, because while I do know how lonely this grief is, I also believe we needn't be alone. Welcome. Hello, fellow griever, and welcome. Today is Season 6, Episode 17 of the Leftover Pieces Suicide Loss Conversations podcast. I'm Melissa, your host, and today we are down the rabbit hole again, just like we are for the entire month of January. So if you haven't been following along, I hope you'll go back and listen to the new episodes that I've launched this month, including the couple-minute daily nugget episodes that I'm putting out as well. And I hope you'll weigh in. I hope you'll weigh in either by emailing me or something else. And as true to my January theme, I'm just going to take about 30 seconds here to ask if you are listening as a mom who's lost a child to suicide. My question for you is, have you prioritized what types of healing you're going to do this year? Because if you haven't, I'm asking because in January I'm running a special for my two biggest impact projects, or I shouldn't even say projects, are not both projects. The legacy project is, the retreats are an empowered healing situation. So the retreats and the legacy project are the two things that I am running a January special on. Please email me and we can talk about that. We can also talk about what they are. There's never any obligation for talking. But if you are thinking of moving the needle forward this year and you are a mom, please reach out to me, because this is when we're planning all of these things for the year. I only have one start date for legacy, which happens to be March 5th. And if you don't already know this, know that I work with people and do payment plans on all of the things of this level that I do. And so that's never an issue. We can talk about a way to work that part out. If it's something you want to do and you want to lean into it, please feel free to reach out to me. I also just finished up the second sold out retreat since I've started offering retreats mid last year. I did one in July, and then I did one in mid-January, and we are just getting past that one at the time of this. That one will be almost over at the time that this episode comes out. So if you would like to know the impact of either of these or how it could possibly work for you, please reach out to me and let's connect. So let's dive into today's episode. Today, what I want to talk about is something that I've had a lot of people ask me about. Why do we share our story? How muches of it, the whens and the whys of it. That's what I want to talk today about. And it's kind of complicated, like a lot of things I talk about, but at its heart, there's a simplicity to it too. So this is something that all of us face at one time or another after our loss by suicide. We face it after any loss, but after a complicated loss like suicide, and I know there are other complicated losses out there, we can really freeze up on how we talk about this, when we talk about it, who we talk about it too. So I thought I would go there a little bit. And recently, I had the heartbreaking honor of talking with a mom who lost her son to suicide in mid-December. When we spoke, she was less than 2 weeks in and had chosen not to tell anyone outside of their immediate household until after the holidays. So at the time we were speaking, she not only wasn't speaking about it to lots of people, but she wasn't even sure how to start to talk about it or when to start telling people and what she would say and how she would protect herself. And if you're listening, Mama, brokenhearted Mama, I'm sending you all the love and peace as you navigate these early times. And you know I'm here. So when I think about these things, many of us sit in shattered disbelief in the early days. We don't have any clue what to say. We don't know how to say it. We don't know who to say it to. And oftentimes we can't even get the words out of our mouth without breaking down, without it being something that we just say, I can't do it. It feels somewhat impossible. So what I'm going to do is lean back on the fact that this is not a linear journey, and it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all loss. Child loss, which is in the case of this mom I referred to, it's also in my case, is the unimaginable, right? Suicide loss is so very complicated, right? So how do we figure it out? How do we figure out the how and when to share? And the bigger one, why? Why do we need to share? Do we have to? If we do, does it benefit us? And how? So let's go that direction. First, I say this unequivocally. We do not have to do anything. Ever. We don't have to. We can make any choice we want on how we deal with this. Remember, not linear. It's also our journey, so we get to do it our way. And you guys know I live in the ands. And at some point, in my belief, you may need to. You may need to start to tell your story in order for you to start to be able to move forward. So let's go to early days. As a good friend and a fellow podcaster that I admire and now collaborate with says so often, do whatever it takes to just get through. In other words, to just get through the day, to just get through the hour, to just get through the minute. And do that without judgment on yourself. Allow yourself the time, the space, the grace to do whatever you need to do to get through when things are so bad you don't know if you can. So definitely that's an early days mantra. And it can be a mantra for days later when you have bad days crop up, right? It's a way to allow ourselves the space. It's a way to give ourselves forgiveness. It's a way to give ourselves grace. So how far beyond the quote unquote early days is too far to go? When are we stuck and we need to get help? Those are the words, and I use that word carefully because it's a word I used at one point. It's a word I've heard lots of grievers use, that at some point they kind of start to feel stuck. Kind of like a plateau in a diet where a lot of times you find yourself stuck in this space that you just feel like you can't go anymore. And oftentimes writing the pause, writing that whatever some of us call stuck, immovable, that space can be the hardest thing to do. That's the space that many of us give up. So pushing through the pause can be super important, which means you're going to have to find some form of support, probably some form of accountability, right? But for just a minute, let's go back to the how do we know when it's time? And for me, my opinion, a basic guide is this. If not telling people, if not sharing it, is causing issues with day-to-day life, then it's time. And by issues, I mean if you find yourself avoiding social situations or people at the water cooler at work or anybody. I mean, for me, I avoided the grocery store when I had a very bad encounter there after a month after Alex was gone. I started avoiding the grocery store because I feared seeing people that I would have to talk about this, tell my story, tell how I'm doing, and I wasn't sure I could. I knew I didn't want to. It was super painful. And that's okay for a while, but there comes a point that we know that we are no longer functioning in a way that's serving us. And when we feel that, quote unquote, stuck, when we feel that we're not able to move into a space that feels like normal functioning, that's when we know. So this is one path to start to dig in, to start to find the light, to find hope, is to start with asking yourself, am I at a place that I feel like I'm dysfunctional? And there's a difference between mourning, mourning, mourning or grief. Mourning to me is almost more the shortened period of early grief. Grief is a long journey. We do it as long as we love the person, which means we'll grieve on some level for our loved ones until we're gone. But we always know inside of ourselves when it's time to get up and do something. And I never want to encourage a griever who needs to do what I call sit in the suck, because there are times in this grief that we need to feel everything in order to get through it. It's the whole feel it to heal it mantra, and it's a mantra for a reason, because there is a period of sitting in this that we sometimes need to do, especially early in grief when we're working through all of the feelings, all the questions, all the whys, the guilt. When we're doing that, it's a process. We want to fast forward it, we want to skip through it, but we can't. But if you feel like you've gone through that process and maybe you're stuck in Groundhog Day now and it feels like either a wash, rinse, and repeat situation, or you just are finding yourself feeling exhausted. When I have a problem that I am working through and it starts to feel like I can't hear myself talk about it anymore because even I'm tired of it, that's when I know it's time. That's when I know it's time to do something and not just sit in the situation. So that's the type of thing I'm talking about. I'm not talking about trying to circumnavigate parts of this loss that we do have to go through as much as we wish we didn't. But I'm talking about when it's time to move forward and start to heal. And I hope you noticed I said move forward and start to heal. I didn't say move on and start to heal, because those are different things. I do always talk about we're able to move forward in this loss, or I'm able to move forward in life. We don't move on from our loved one. We don't leave them behind. We bring them with us. That's why I call it moving forward. So, at some point, I believe you'll be there. At some point, I believe your time will be right. And for some people, it's really early on. They need to start sharing their story right away. Again, that goes back to how we are as individual people. Some people don't start doing it for years. But a good place to start is the therapy, the tools, and the community support. These things help us. So find some therapeutic outlet, find tools, find support and community. Telling our story empowers us because it does what we really don't want it to do, but what we very much need it to do. It takes our story and our loved one out of the closet of shame and sadness so that we can heal our trauma, learn to grieve in a healthy and beneficial way, and ultimately give our loved one's life the incredible spotlight it deserves. I know that's a lot, but it's also true. I used to quote an unknown author a lot, and I haven't done it for a while, but the quote, I said unknown, I don't know where the quote came from, but I used to say it a lot in the early days of working with moms, back when I had just one support group. But today I was reminded of that quote, and I used to say, I'm learning to live in the sunlight of Alex's life and no longer be stuck in the shadow of his death. And it's really profound. That's why I used to say it, because it's true. That's what we're learning to do. So many of us suicide loss survivors get stuck in the moment and method of loss. And we let that one moment and that one act, because I won't call it a choice or a decision. You guys know that I those are ambiguous terms where suicide loss is concerned. But in that one moment, that one occurrence, we can't negate the entire life that they lived, the vibrant, beautiful, amazing humans that they were, that deserve to be remembered with all the reverence of anybody else who passes. So now I would go a bit deeper and say that telling our story is like slowly peeling back fog and clouds. We're looking for rainbows. We're seeking sunlight. And the repetitive nature of telling our story familiarizes us with it and helps it to become something that we don't have to like anymore, but we can become more comfortable with. And the more comfortable we become with it, the more likely we are to lean into the healing and moving forward part. Now, these days, I can tell my story almost anywhere to almost anyone. And usually, not always, I can make it through without a lot of tears or getting choked up. That still happens sometimes, but it doesn't happen very, very often like it used to. I used to not be able to hardly get the words out before I was choked up and crying. And that's just the way it was. And I had to just push through the discomfort in order to gain the outcome, which was the growth and the being able to lean into the healing. So now I see the power and the reward, not only to me, I see the power and the reward in the people that I share my story with. Because in sharing Alex's life, there's two main benefits. Postvention becomes prevention, you guys. So even if I'm not actively working in the prevention field, there's an element to what I do that becomes prevention by the very talking about the long-lasting, forever life-altering effects of suicide. But then there's also the legacy, and that's huge. Being able to lean into Alex's life and share all of these things that he left with us, with the world, and knowing that his legacy will live on. Those are the reasons. That's the power. So I would encourage you to find a safe space to start. My top 2 recommendations for safe spaces are some form of therapist and a specific loss support space. And by that, I mean, if you're a mom, find a mom's suicide loss group. If you're a sibling, find a sibling's support group. You get what I'm saying there, but I wanted to be sure you understood. One or both of these might be right for you. Some people do them in conjunction with each other, therapy, counseling, whatever, and support groups, and some do them separately. But I recommend one or the other or both as a start. There's not just one way, remember? And I do promise you that if you put in the work, it will get easier to bear over time. You will learn to live alongside this, and it will help. But remember, give yourself a lot of grace and space along the way. This is hard, and this is lonely, but you don't have to be alone. And I'm going to circle back on just one last thing that I said earlier on in the podcast when I referred to a fellow podcaster and friend of mine that always says, do whatever it takes to get through. His name is Dan Megler, and he has a podcast called Not Allowed to Die. And he talks about various issues involving mental health and therapy. He is a licensed social worker and a school counselor, and is also an advocate and spokesperson for the incredible organization Pause for Patrick. Dan and I is also one of my co-hosts for my upcoming podcast. So this is part of the shameless plug part, is I am launching my new podcast at the end of January. If some of you have been listening, you know I talked about launching it back at the end of November and possibly in December. But when I found myself in a paused space with the leftover pieces, I decided that the impact of that launch would be lost and that so many of you wouldn't know about it. So I decided to wait until I kind of did the reboot of the Leftover Pieces, got things back up and running with it. And I'm just waiting to push that button to launch the new podcast called Let's Really Talk About Suicide, somewhere between controversial and complicated. And Dan Megler is one of my co-hosts, as is Mike Hicks of Hicks Strong, as is A.S. King, award-winning young adult author and founder and president of Gracie's House. So I hope you'll look forward to that if it's something that fits at this point in your journey. It won't fit with everyone. But more than that, I hope you took something from today. I hope there was a nugget somewhere in there that maybe resonated with you. And like I always say, take what serves you and leave the rest. Don't ever get caught up on something that maybe doesn't fit for you or doesn't serve you. My intention is to bring you my experiences and the experiences as I've seen from others, and try to impart that wisdom out into the world so that maybe you can benefit from some parts of it. And I hope that today did that for you a little bit. And I look forward to the next couple of episodes this month, and then launching into some new exciting conversations in February. And please, if you're interested at all in anything that I have to offer, please reach out at melissa@theleftoverpieces.com. Take good care of yourself and know that I'm thinking
So
of
we'll
you
conclude
and your
here
loved
for
one.
today.
Talk soon.
But I just wanted to say a few things before you go. If you're new to the podcast and have not listened to the very first episode called Intro, episodes start here, all the way back at the beginning of season 1, I would encourage you to do so that you know what to expect from the Leftover Pieces, because I do have several different styles of episodes that I record, and we do release weekly, almost all of the time. So I hope that you will come back often to join us in this community of suicide loss survivors. If you have not already, also, I would encourage you to check out theleftoverpieces.com, where you can find and have access to all of the things that I currently offer. Some of those things are online Zoom support groups, links to my books, educational opportunities that I'm adding all the time, as well as different downloadables and resources for all suicide loss survivors. And if you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, or you'd just like to connect with me for any other reason, you can do it through the website as well. So until next time, I just want to remind you that I know how lonely this grief is, but you don't have to be alone. Talk soon.